and then write your exams. So I managed it and qualified very well. Professor Mills was my lecturer in company law, and it worked very well. I don't know the present circumstances, but during our time, we were able to do it.
It was your boss at the as a tax inspector, and
yes.
Also your lecturer in the law school.
Yes, my commissioner and my lecturer.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to I want to have his take on this. I mean, you and I have had a lot of private discussions about the challenges that members of parliament face with their MMDCs, and the challenge that when you are in opposition, you feel the pain and you complain a lot. When you are in government, then you forget about the worries. You don't have much complaint until you come back to opposition again. Then it confronts you again. Then you start complaining. And I was thinking that whether it will not be appropriate to amend the Local Government Act, because all the MMDCs does is to sign the disbursement form, so that yes, we let the member of parliament sign then the MP signs it. You think that this may be too difficult, or do you think there will be some challenges with this arrangement?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think that should be a problem. Indeed, I must commend Haji Alima Mahama, the immediate past minister. I know that for every time that any MP would approach her, that they were having difficulties with their DCs or MCs. She should be the first to ask that we call the person, or she will call herself to find out exactly what was happening. To the extent that she will insist that if the right thing is not done, and the MP goes ahead to ask a question on the floor, she will sanction the MC or DC. It's true that some chief executives have been a bit difficult. There are several complaints where they think that even they use their share of the common fund without even seeking any consent or approval. So indeed, what you're suggesting could work, but something that I should pass it on to the minister and also pursue the projects that they are doing.
I just want to also have his take. You know, there was this attempt to amend the constitution and to elect MMDCs. We should be able to elect them in a non-partisan. What is your take on this?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My good friend knows our position. We without going back to what has happened, the president on 1st December 2019, just before the referendum, had to ask the then minister to withdraw the bill from Parliament because, in his view, maybe didn't appear to have achieved a consensus on a very vital issue like a referendum for the election of MMDCs. We couldn't achieve consensus because I thought we went very far. If you read the Hansards, you see that on both sides we appeared to agree that indeed MMDCs should be elected. Somewhere along the line, very close to the time, the consensus broke down. If we see what is going on now, I'm sure we should still be convinced that that's the way to go. We are far behind when it comes to this aspect. Almost every serious democratic country. There's no way that you even elect unit committee members, you elect assembly members, but you don't elect MMDCs. So if we agree that that's the way forward, as you said, we could take it one step at a time. But I also have to draw your attention to the fact that if you make it non-partisan, the other aspect is that you may have 20, 30 candidates all trying to be MCs. If you look at what is happening now, even within MPP itself, there are places where there are 15 or 20 applications. But if we were to make it partisan, then the party will be constrained, will be forced to present only one candidate. If there are a few independent ones, fine. But if you open the floodgates that it's time for anybody to contest for MMDC, the number may be unworthy. But we should all sit down and see the way forward, especially building the consensus and letting both sides know that this is the way to go. Just recently, we saw the elections in the UK. Very, very streamlined, very meticulous, and very useful for the democracy. I don't see why we should be lagging behind in this aspect. There are several benefits in electing MMDCs, and it's still on the table, and we are hoping that we'll build consensus to be able to move forward.
Yes. Very well. I can ask you about your CV. On your last, your referees, number 11. Your referees. Number 2, His Excellency Papa Uzankuma. Oh, no, he pronounced it Papa.
Papa.
Uzankuma.
Uzankuma.
High Commissioner of Ghana to the UK.
Yes.
13 Begeb. Is
Sure.
he still the High Commissioner to UK?
Yes, please. He has been nominated. He's gone through orientation.
So is he the High Commissioner as of today?
No, probably. Is it designate?
I
In
should
fact,
be asking you that.
In fact, they are commissioning, the president is commissioning them tonight. But for the records, as at the time I did it, he had not yet to be commissioned. Yes.
So probably a High Commissioner designate. Or past High Commissioner. Either of them will fit.
Yes.
Right. Yes, I'll allow 2 each from other side, and then those who didn't ask questions, the last person, I'll give you priority. Yes, after that I'll go to Giselle. You ask question of the other ones, right?
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much, knowing very well that it's unconstitutional for him to engage in that conduct. Because there's no such title. There's no such title as Deputy Senior Minister, but he's been responding to the rendition of his title. But on a more serious note, one major challenge which decentralized levels of government in this country face is financing. Financing. Because we expect them to fix roads, fix bridges, fix, water system. I recall that the NDC government, at the time of the tenure of Seth Terkper, toyed with the idea of a municipal bonds bill. I don't know if during you took, or if you haven't done anything, whether you want to look it up and see if it is something that we could work on, because a major problem with decentralization is fiscal decentralization, which we keep singing but not doing much about.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, as you said, some of the assemblies are not too well endowed, and most of them would want other avenues to be able to raise revenue, to be able to carry out their duties, the projects, programs, etc. At least I know that for the past 4 years, we've put in some interventions to be able to get the assemblies, have some funding to be able to carry out what they want to do. Part we need this assemblies assessment too, and for that we've tried to also encourage them to increase the IGF. But of course, the major one would be the bill, the financing bill, which would also give them the opportunity to even have borrowing powers up to a certain level, of course, with the approval of the Minister of Finance. That bill has gone to Cabinet. I'm sure the new minister would also have a look at it and get the Cabinet approval so that the bill is brought to Parliament. And that will enhance the opportunity for assemblies to be able to find money to be able to carry out their programs and their projects. But a lot of funding has gone to the assemblies. Apart from what I've said, if you look at the whole focus of the president's vision, one district, one factory, planting for food and jobs, one village, one dam. Even on our side, we have the Ghana Secondary Cities project, $100 million project, which is running for 5 years. And then also the Ghana Ghana Productivity Net program, which is also a $60 million project with Ministry of Gender. So what we need to do is to still have these assemblies to be very resourceful. The policy of local economic development has been developed. It's now one of the thrusts in the whole decentralization policy and strategy. So more or less, we are also aware that indeed we have to make the districts and the municipalities attractive enough for investors to also come in. And that is the way forward, except that all the
Yes. Anybody from the minority side? Very well, Honorable.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, wants to find out from the Honorable Nominee, since he worked at the local government ministry as deputy minister in the last administration of the president, if he can give us the costs of fumigating our markets when COVID hit, and the purpose of the fumigation, given the fact that the United Nations and other agencies revealed, health-related agencies revealed that this fumigation really had nothing to do with COVID. The costs and the purpose of the fumigation, if he knows. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I would not have the figures here to give the cost because they were in phases. And the first time that it was mentioned was at the press conference by Honorable Minister Haji Alima Mahama, August 2020. I think that was the first phase or so. I don't have the figures. And I'm sure if we ask the minister a question in Parliament, he can bring all the details. I don't want to start mentioning figures when I don't have the details. It will be very unfair. For how useful the fumigation was, I think it was very useful. For every district, every corner, over 1,500 markets were fumigated. We went to churches, mosques, marketplaces. A lot was done, and I think that if anybody should say that it was not useful because the World Health Organization was saying so, I would disagree with that person. Indeed, it really helped us in checking this whole COVID menace. And sometimes when you get a bit comfortable, you be for.
Chairman, with your indulgence, Honorable Nominee, what the Honorable Suhini is seeking is to demand information from you. In your answer, you are suggesting that he can come by way of question. You are a long-standing member of this committee and a respected member of the committee. Afford him that privilege, that information, he needs it for the purpose of your scrutiny as deputy minister at that ministry, in order to understand what you know about that particular activity and how much it costs the state. So, Chairman, differing as to question time, I don't think that is good enough. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry if I've created the impression that I have the information, but I will not give. I'm sorry if I've created that impression. It's not for me to get that impression at all. What I'm saying is that I cannot sit here and make up numbers. I don't have the figures. The first figure that we had was when the minister had a press conference and said that thus far we have spent some money. As we speak, the auditors are on it.
But do you remember that figure?
The first figure?
Yes.
She mentioned it as 76 million.
Okay.
But we've gone beyond that.
Okay.
Beyond that, I don't have.
Will you provide the numbers to this committee, Chair?
No, that would be for the minister to bring those numbers. It's not within my power to say that.
Is it not within your knowledge, Chairman?
Knowledge is different from power. And as I speak,
I like that.
As I speak, all those figures will have to be put up. And I'm sorry if I said that instead of giving you the answer, go and ask the question. That is not the impression at all.
I wish to thank the minority leader for helping with.
But you are supposed to be my friend.
Supposed to, with some clarity.
You are supposed to be my friend.
Yeah, you are my friend. I don't know what you think of me, but I think of you as a friend.
Radio Go days.
Right. Except that you sought to challenge the claims by experts that fumigation had nothing to do with COVID. You are arguing that it helped in the fights against COVID, but the experts at the time, and I'm sure it is still the prevailing knowledge, indicated that fumigation had nothing to do with the fight against COVID.
Well, as I said, as far as we are concerned, it helped us, and we were not the only country to have pursued that path. Even developed countries felt that it was way to go. So we cannot spend all the time in debating whether it helped us or not. But as far as we are concerned, we thought it was very useful.
Well, we'll follow up for the total cost, though. But let me go to my next question. I have here with me a list of 1,486 different companies that engage in constructing various facilities across the country in almost every district of Ghana. Many of these facilities were 14-seater, 20-seater, and 16-seater public toilets. Now, these companies were said to have been engaged by a company known as Messiers Ghana First Company Limited. And Messiers Ghana First Company Limited were introduced to the district assemblies by the Ministry for Water Resources, Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, and the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I will just share portions of the introductory letters to the ministries. First, the one for Sanitation and Water Resources, the relevant portion for me says, the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources has subjected the facility to technical and financial reviews, and its viability and sustainability is not in doubt. This was from the Ministry for Sanitation and Water Resources. That from the Ministry of Local Government, signed by your good self, Honorable Obiamwa, is short. With your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'll read the full letter. Yes. Dated 9th August 2017, letter of introduction, Ghana First Company Limited. Please kindly find attached a self-explanatory request from Ghana First Company Limited. The company is proposing to enter into a PPP arrangement with the Metropolitan Municipal and District Assemblies and request to formally engage you in this venture. We have no objection to the request to engage the MMDA subject to the laid down procedure for the PPP program. You are kindly requested to accord the company the necessary courtesies towards facilitating the ventureship. please do not hesitate to contact the Chief Director of the Ministry for clarification or direction. We count on your cooperation. Signed, Honorable Obi Amwa, MP, Deputy Minister for the Minister. Now, these projects are at various levels of completion across the districts. The companies that were engaged sank their monies into putting up these projects. Ghana First Company Limited seem to have disappeared into thin air, and they do not know where to go for their monies. I'm talking about these 1,486 companies. They do not know where to go for their monies. They do not have funds again to complete these resources. And out to dupe these 1,486 companies across the country.
Well, I'm glad that you read the full letter that I wrote, because I remember when the Honorable Minister appeared, or when the Minister for Water and Sanitation designate appeared, you read only part of the letter. The company approached the ministry. On several occasions, what we told them was that we don't want to engage them in such transaction as the mother ministry. If they have any transaction which they think is laudable enough, they should approach the assemblies. That's all that we did. And indeed, without prejudice, because this matter, the National Security is investigating. We've sent a report to the Office of the President. Police CID is involved. The First Ghana has not vanished. They haven't vanished, as far as I'm aware. Just the past few weeks, they've even been meeting the minister as to how to mitigate what is going on. Indeed, we also have a claim against them. If I say we, the assemblies. Well, what did they do? They approached the assemblies that give us land, and then we will secure funding to put up these facilities so that you can have your share of the proceeds. So in the first place, some lands were taken from the assemblies. In some places, I'm aware that some facilities were even broken down for them to have access to the land. Halfway, they contracted all those people to build. The assemblies didn't go for the contractors. They brought their own contractors to build. And they said they should use their money to build. They should get to about 60%, and then they will pay them. Show them what they thought was approval from commercial bank, and some loans that they said they were even taken from outside Ghana, Germany, etc., etc. At the end of the day, some of the projects are still hanging, and it's not, my constituency is even included. So at the end of the day, we are chasing them to make sure they complete the project, because our lands are involved. And two, it got to a point, Suhini, listen very well. It got to a point when we even wanted to intervene, they sent us very strongly worded letters that this is a private venture. We should not get involved because they engage the contractors and they have paid some money to the contractors. They brought us a whole list of what they had advanced to the contractors. So they don't see why we should be involved, even though we said that we had interest in the first place because the lands were our lands, and two, the contractors had to be protected, even though we did not engage them or sign any contract with them. So that is where it is. But as I said, the security agencies are investigating, and I should be careful in not making any comments that would prejudice the whole thing. But as I said, even since the minister came, they've had meetings with them, and because the minister wants to know the way forward as to how we address all this whole thing.
So what due diligence, a follow-up question, what due diligence was done by your ministry before these introductory letters were written for this company, for which, you know, innocent contractors believed that they were entering into a genuine partnership with them? What due diligence did you do?
Well, in the first place, as I said, we didn't write letters. We only wrote a letter and asked the assemblies.
When I use letters, I'm referring to the other one from the Ministry.
I said I cannot speak for them.
Yes.
We asked the assemblies that make sure that you go through the process, including the PPP arrangement. And that should also let you know that we expected them to do some kind of due diligence. The reality is that, unfortunately, contractors felt that it was bonanza. I heard everybody was carrying his everything to go and sign agreement with them. And we hear you are awarding contract. We want to build facilities that will benefit the communities. Just give us what you have, vacant land. We will build. When we build, we share the proceeds. People were building. They were building. Some places, what was a bit worrying was that every corner you saw them building. Every corner. And the contractors were chasing them. And some places they've built to a certain level. They brought us lists to show that they were paying them. But it got to a point we saw that they were stuck. And then even the police came in. Some of the directors were even detained. I can let you know. And some of us were even interviewed. We told them what had gone on. It's not that anybody had any interest whatsoever, whether monetary or whatever. We thought that it was genuine arrangement. If the assemblies were interested, they could go ahead and deal with them. This is where it has reached.
Yes, Giselle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the heckler in chief. He gave us a baptism of fire when we came on the appointments committee in the early days. Now we are used to him. Thank you. Just one or two questions I'd like to ask. With your experience in local government, at what point will a review of the whole decentralization system be necessary? Or has there ever been such a review ever since there was decentralization introduced into Ghana?
Well, I don't know, Mr. Chairman, I don't know the extent to which you want to appreciate review. As far as I'm concerned, we came to meet a policy which covered a review of the whole process. It ended in 2019. We've started a new policy, 2020 to 2024, which will also make sure that we push this whole process forward. And before we do that, we make the relevant review, look at the shortfalls and the challenges, and then how to also push the policies. So as far as I'm concerned, with the decentralization policy, a review has been done, and we've started implementing the current policy, as I said, which is 2020-2024, and the fact that we still want to deepen democracy. So you have the 6 areas that we are looking at. This time we've included local economic development because we think it's a major issue. Income earning, employment, developing the districts, rural development, a key part. And then...
Now my second question is relating to that. In my constituency, I'll just give you an idea of some figures of some electoral areas and the number of assemblymen, elected assemblymen who are there. One town has 18,944 and it has 8 electoral areas. Another town has 18,842 and has 4 electoral areas. Another one has 10,722 and has 1 electoral area. Looking at the figures I've just given, at what point is there going to be a review vis-a-vis local government and whether with the EC or whoever to kind of realign some of these figures because they are not realistic. One elected assemblyman overseeing 10,000 or 8,000 people.
Mr. Chairman, that's a very good observation. The electoral areas are created by the Electoral Commission, and indeed, they've even moved forward. It was far worse than this. If you take the major cities, Accra, Kumasi, etc., you had an electoral area which was even bigger than the whole constituency. So some electoral areas have been created, and they've reached a certain figure. It's a case that we can still make to them, so that obviously one person representing 10,000 or more makes it very difficult for him to operate. So we can still look at some of these areas and then impress upon them to see whether they can create additional electoral areas, even though they always complain that it's at a cost to them. It's the way to go, and I agree with you that we should be able to let them know that there's still some work to do.
Because if you want it to be effective, then it has to be, and I hope that it will be in this your 4-year term, because if it's not, I mean, 8,000, one person handling 8,000 people without a salary, but assemblymen are not paid. And to be fair to them, that's another system allowance of 90 CDs meeting. That's another matter altogether. And I'm sure every elected assemblyman will realize that at some point, is it even worth all the worry and the hassle?
I agree with you. We will sit down with the Electoral Commission. As I said, we've gone far enough, but they can still look at some of these situations. Accra was worse. You could have a big area and they will tell you 6 electoral areas. Thankfully, when we broke Accra into pieces more or less, creating more assemblies, etc., they've been pushed in to also create more electoral areas. So we can look at it.
Thank you. Honorable Jare. We should move on. Very well. Honorable Neil Antevanda.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for the opportunity to ask my very good friend and brother, local government colleague. Yes. My senior member of the local government committee until recently. I want to take you to a very important issue in local governance, which is budget hearings and town hall appraisal of fiscal allocations to the assembly. So, for example, your assembly, Akuapem, always. But over the years, the ministry to ensure that this particular responsibility of the assemblies is adhered to.
Deputy Minister, you are now, I don't know whether you are still the ranking. Yes. But if you look carefully, in 2016 we passed the Local Governance Act, and under section 41, figures for the D-part arrangement and funding. So if you don't prove that you've gone through this process, you'll be sanctioned and you may lose part of the funding because you will then not qualify when it comes to the measures that will be looked at. So I would say that at least in my stay in the ministry, it's been something that we have been pursuing, and as far as we are concerned, it's a trigger for us to say that you are running the assembly well or you are not running the assembly well. Because there's a whole session on participatory governance at the local level. And beyond engaging them, notices, even information, van, etc., they are all part of the process which is listed here. And we say that it's something that we expect them to do, something that we monitor. Those who don't do it, we sanction them according to the act and everything. So probably that is the assurance that I can give on behalf of the minister. But the Local Governance Act is supposed to be followed, and we are making sure that they do it.
As a follow-up to that one, you acceded to the fact that all the fingers are not equal. So, for example, Adanse West Assembly will not have the same sort of support or IGF like Adanse East or Akuapem North. Will you then agree to also look at areas where there is poverty, issues of lack of development, lack of facilities, so that those areas can catch up with the urban centers in terms of development with the provision of adequate resources.
Because if you talk only about compliance, without looking maybe at the needs, you may end up shortchanging some less endowed assemblies or districts. So it's a very good point, and I think the minister has also made that point, and I believe that we can follow up on it. And you followed everything, so which has more or less affected some of the assemblies.
You're done. Eric, he walked away. He just came. He can't come and jump in.
Thank you very
I'm
much,
not
Mr. Chairman, for the
recognizing you,
opportunity.
Eric. You just came in.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
thank you very much for the opportunity to ask 1.5 questions. Honorable nominee, there is a development in our district, municipal, and metropolitan assemblies. I have with me here the implementation of the medium-term national development policy framework, annual progress report 2019, and in paragraph 30 on recurrent expenditure. In fact, the report indicates that in Ashanti region, the MMDAs in Ashanti region spent 90% of their total revenues on recurrent expenditure, leaving just 10% for capital expenditure. And when you look at the figures, Ashanti region was first, followed by Northern region, 80.6%, then OT region, 80.5%, then Greater Accra, 76.7%. But you know the common fund, as part of their revenue, is meant for development. You're also aware of the DDF. So how can we contain or correct this? I mean, stop this. It is affecting the development of the localities. How do we address it?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know the report you are holding. Honorable Eric, which report is that?
An agenda for jobs, implementation of the medium-term national development policy framework, annual progress 2019, National Development Planning Commission.
It's a planning commission report.
Yes.
Yes.
And you have a copy.
Yes. Indeed, it's a challenge in some areas, but we need to validate the figures. I'm not doubting the figures at all. But if we were to spend 90% on recurring expenditure, that means that they will have nothing to show. It's something that, this is a 2019 report, it's something that the ministry should still be addressing. And I think that I'll inform the minister that this is a major issue which has been raised here. I'm sure he's already been briefed, but they know the implications of not complying with the budget, either for the DPAT or for the common fund. And indeed, it's interesting, but now people want to still be appointed as MMDCs. Regional ministers and the RCCs are supposed to give reports on the performance of chief executives. Some of these things may even go against them. I'm saying may, because I don't have the authority to say that this will go against them. I say may even go against them. Because if adverse reports like this are really used, then the appointing authority, who is the president, would not take kindly to some of these things. That's what I can say for now, without trying to pass judgment here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Then the last half of the question. Honorable, whatever policy the Assembly is considering for the understanding of the people. In fact, it is to facilitate their movement up and down between the Assembly and the communities. These motorbikes must be fueled, and when they break down, they must be serviced. What do you think can be done to ensure that they can buy fuel, they can also service it at regular intervals in order to enhance their performance?
Well, thank you. You said it. I'm aware that we procured motorbikes for the assembly members. And as we speak, the new members are in, and we have also initiated efforts to get them new motorbikes. Regarding how they're going to fuel the motorbikes, it comes to sit here and say that every assembly member who gets a motorbike is also entitled to fuel. The financial implications will be huge. And we don't even have the authority. It's only the cabinet, Minister of Finance may be making a presentation to Parliament. But it all boils down to how resourceful the assembly person is and how resourceful the assembly is to be able to say that when we hold meetings, you come with your motorbikes, we give you TNT, and we give you sitting allowance to mitigate what you're saying. So that is how we can talk about it. We cannot sit here and promise that. Indeed, I remember the last elections, the issue of whether assembly members should be paid came up, and some promises were made. But we should also know that it's in the Constitution how chief executives are to be paid and how assembly members are to be paid. Article 250 caters for the chief executives, and for assembly members it's specified that they should be paid through the IGF and yes. I see.
Thank you very much. Now, leadership.
Chairman, Honorable Obi Amwa, unlucky you, still Deputy Minister Senior. I recognize and I prayed for you, but my prayer didn't work. And I understand that I'll share the reason with you. Political party financing, what's your view on it? What do you think? Monetization of our democracy is worrying over abuse of incumbency, excessive use of money in our body politic. What suggestions do you have to improve that? Thank you, Chair.
Well, if you look at the Political Parties Act and even our Constitution, you may say that we try to streamline how political party funding should be carried out, etc. But it's quite an old document. Just recently, I think South Africa passed an act on political party financing. We should be able to look at our present situation and bring in a bill that will cater for the present situation and make sure that we comply with it. It's one thing having the laws, and another thing complying with the laws. Just recently, the EC was complaining that if they were to go strictly by the rules, most of the parties would even not exist. It's not good enough, but I think that the way to go is to have new laws on political party financing. The other aspect, which is a bit controversial, is that presidential system is very expensive. If you compare presidential system with the parliamentary system, presidential system is very expensive. Because if you're holding elections, the president is a candidate across the country. You should have his billboards in Hamile, his posters, his t-shirts across the country. Whereas for the parliamentary system, the Prime Minister wins his constituency, he gets the majority. He lives in Parliament, but they have their pros and cons. But part of the reason why our system appears to be expensive is the presidential system.
Thank you very much. One of the authorities of decentralization in Ghana, Professor Kwame Ahoy, in the book Decentralization Reforms in Ghana, the Experiences of the Fifth and Sixth Governments of the Fourth Republic, talks about internally government fiscal framework, intergovernmental fiscal framework, what he describes as IGFF. And
the new decentralization policy and strategy that we've just put together. Fiscal decentralization is key to decentralization. And for some of these things, that's why we are even pursuing the finance bill to be able to empower the assemblies in a far better way than what is going on now. So I don't have any problem at all with, except that I don't know all the pillars that he's standing on. But I'm saying that it's part of our policy and it's something that we are pursuing.
In assisting your minister, Chairman, I want to find out from the Deputy Minister nominee. Professor Kwame also emphasizes the quality of the human resource of the local government system. Any plans to improve that?
Well, it's interesting because I always say that for you on the other side, you always tout yourself as grassroots people and you are for the masses. But in 2016, the local governance bill submitted to Parliament, the provisions were submitted where the minimum qualification for MCE or DCE was to be minimum first degree. And somehow we did not accept it. I have the bill here. I can show you to page 111 of the bill. It said that if you wanted to be a chief executive, your minimum should be first degree, and then you should have stayed in the constituency. You should have shown that you have the management skills. Yeah, I mean, those things which, on the face of it, you could see that probably sought to exclude some persons who could also really run the assembly. But as I said, at the committee level, we did not accept it. And so now you don't need to hold certain skills before you can be appointed a chief executive. Just like the Constitution hasn't set down any criteria for educational background for a person to be a member of parliament or even a president. So that is where the challenge is. And if you don't do it for the president, the vice, the minister, the MP, why would you say that for chief executive, the person should have a minimum first degree before he can run the district?
Chairman, when it comes to law, I know my colleague is deep, but Minister Deputy Nominee, if you may recall, part of our problem when the President submitted to Parliament
human feces and plastics as many defecate in the open. Residents are up in arms when the situation gets out of hand.
Because of these meetings, you can't even stand there for even a minute. As we speak here, if the mosquitoes even refuse to breathe on it.
Partners in sanitation suggest alternative policy interventions.
Landfilling is not the way forward. We are recommending treatment facilities.
But in all of this, have we made gains in the sector?
How can you have a people who have a lot of dignity and still practicing open defecation?
The task facing Ghana to achieve SDG Goal 6 on clean water and sanitation for all is Herculean and riddled with equally complicated hurdles Join us every Thursday on Wash Hour from 4:05 p.m. to 5 p.m. as we seek to put these issues and more in perspective. Watch a repeat on Fridays from 1 to 2 p.m. and on Sundays 9:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. It is our duty to keep our surroundings clean and free from disease.
AM live on GBC News, Unique 95.7 and all GBC regional stations, and on Facebook at Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, and a repeat on the same day at 11 p.m. on GTV. Focus, putting the issues in perspective.